it's Rebecca here from Precious Pages Papercraft, and today I'm excited to be sharing a layout with you for Miranda Webber's Let's Get Sketchy series. So Miranda sent a series of sketches out to a number of us and asked us each to pick a sketch to base our layout from, and this is the sketch I've chosen here, and I absolutely adore it. Really appealed to me with lots of white space on the page. And I'm a bit of a sucker for layouts with kind of a starburst design as well, like cutting papers into shards. So it really did speak to me, this sketch. So that's why I picked this one. I'm using 49 and Market's ARToptions Viken collection that I got from Paper Maze, and I love the purple and green tones in this. I have a series of photos I took of my little boy in the woods all amongst the bluebells, and a couple of days or weeks after I took those photos, I saw a sneak preview of this collection and knew instantly that I was going to buy this and use it for my bluebell photos. So I'm going to have a whole series of photos scrapped with this collection. So as you saw, I just selected some of the patterned papers and I've cut them diagonally to create some little shards. Now I've done them slightly thinner than they are on the sketch. I'm using the sketch as kind of a jumping off point as my inspiration, and I'm going to change it just slightly just to make it work for me. So rather than having the three big shards over on the left hand side, I'm going to have a series of smaller shards, a bit narrower, and I'm going to bring my page slightly more into the centre. Now I don't think I bring it completely central, because I wanted some of my shards to come out at more of an angle, I had to bring it into the more of the centre of the page so they weren't hanging off the edge. So I've definitely used the sketch as my starting point. You can see how I was inspired by it. I've got these shards in place. I know how I want them to sit, so I've stapled them and taped them together just to make life a bit easier, so I can now move them on and off the page as one piece and not have to keep arranging them. I'm going to add some mixed media, so I'm going to be bringing them back in and taking them back off to see if I'm happy with my mixed media, and it's just so much easier to move things as one piece. So a good old staple through the middle there has helped me out a bit. And to bring in some texture to the page, I'm using an edge distressing tool, and I'm distressing all the edges of those papers. Now if you don't have one of these tools, you can get them from most craft shops or Amazon, and they're a couple of quid each. They're not expensive at all. But if you don't have one to hand, you can use the edge of your scissor blade as well. It'll give you exactly the same effect. But I do find I'm a little heavy-handed with my distressing. I like to have lots of distressing and have it quite obvious. So when I'm using my scissors, I do tend to tear the papers a bit more. So the edge distressing tool has a little tiny blade in a little gap, and it kind of just stops me going OTT and tearing my papers, so I do tend to use that more often. So I've got my starburst of pattern papers sorted now, and I want to work on my photo because I need to see where this is going to sit on my page so that I know where to apply my mixed media. So I've got a 3x4 photo today. I have added a layer of white cardstock behind it to give it a nice border or frame, just to help it stand out against my background a little bit. And then I've added a pattern paper from the collection. So the B sides have got kind of bolder patterns on. They're not quite solid patterns, solid papers. They do have sort of patterns to them, but they do read as a bit more of a solid. So I've used that lovely dark purple one there just to add a layer behind my photo, again just to help it pop against the sort of paler colours of those pattern paper shards. So then when I knew where everything was going to sit, I just very faintly drew an outline in a pencil around everything so I could see where my mixed media needs to go. And I've pulled out some distress inks and distress oxides. I've used a distress ink in Dusty Concord. That was the first colour I applied. Next I brought in a distress oxide, another purple colour, and I think that's called Wilted Violet. I'll pop a list in the description box below of the colours I've used. Then I pulled in a distress oxide in Mowed Lawn, a bit of green, and then I'm pulling out a couple of Lindy's Starburst sprays just to add some splatters to the background. Now these are nice shimmery sprays, so it just brings a little bit of shimmer to the page. Nothing major, I don't want it to be too sparkly, but it just gives kind of another level of depth to the background, just makes it a little bit more interesting and some variation. And then I come back in with the Dusty Concord Distress Ink, which is a darker purple, and add some splatters. And I roll the kitchen towel over it just to soak up the excess. the longer you leave ink splatters, the darker and bolder the colour will be on the background. So these last purple ones I wanted to be a bit bolder, so I've left those on without rubbing them off. And now I want to add a little bit of mint green. There are hints of mint in the pattern papers that I'm using today. And this is an original Shimmers, it's called It's Mint to Be. So I've just added that to some packaging, watered it down slightly so that it splatters a bit easier. And then I've added those splatters on top. And I'm going to use my heat gun to dry these off. And then you can see here, once that's dry, I'm going to give you a quick close-up. Some of the colours have blended slightly. It hasn't come out too muddy, so I'm not too worried. But I've got clear, distinct purple and green patches in my background, so I'm really happy with how that looks. And now I'm just going to secure those shards in place with a bit of tape, and I'm going to run each one through my sewing machine and add a line of straight white stitching down the centre of each one, so that I can then kind of turn the edges up and create a bit of dimension. And there we go, love the power of editing. I'll give you a close-up again of that stitching. So it's just a straight running stitch down the centre of each one, and I can turn the edges up now, and I love how this looks. It's something I tend to do quite often if I'm using kind of paper shards. Love to stitch down the middle and have the edges turned up. So now I've got my mixed media finished and I've got those shards secured in place. I'm going to get my photo stuck down. I'm using some craft foam in a couple of areas just where the paper shards don't sit, and that's just to raise my photo up a little bit. Where I've bent those shards up, it's created a little bit of depth behind the photo, so I need that foam to raise the photo up so it doesn't sink down in the middle, if that makes sense. So now before I move on to the embellishing, I want to get my title sorted, because at this point I wasn't too sure which title I wanted to use. So I've got a number of Bramble Fox perspectives. Love Bramble Fox. I'm on the design team, so I've got quite a stash built up now. But they are my go-to pieces for titles on my pages. So I pulled out a few in different colours, but I settled for this gorgeous white one that says Perfect Moments. And if you're not familiar with Bramble Fox, they are acrylic perspectives, and when you get them, they've got like a protective film layout on the front and back that you just have to peel off before using them. And I've decided that I want to move my title slightly. In the sketch, it's at the top of the page above the photo. I'm going to use it at the bottom of my photo, just because I felt it sat better with the way that the words were written. And I've added some craft foam behind a couple of the letters on the left, just to raise that whole title up to the same level, so that because obviously my photo's got foam behind it, then it will sit flat across. Apologies if you can hear my little boy singing in the bath in the background. I'm sat in the room next to him and all I can hear is him singing now, so apologies. It just never goes right, does it? But now I've got my title in place, I am moving on to embellishing. I'm starting off with a couple of tags from the collection. Again, this is the Viken collection by 49 and Market. So I've got a purple tag over on the right and then a more kind of minty green one over on the left. And in getting that one in place, I've just popped my title off accidentally. So getting that stuck back down. Glossy Accents is amazing stuff. It's a really strong hold, but it does take a little bit for it to dry, just a few seconds. But I obviously hadn't given it long enough just now, so it's popped back off. And now I'm just going to go through the collection and pull out a few little bits. I don't want to embellish too heavily because I want those shards to really sing. I love how they look, and I don't want to cover up too much of that mixed media. So there's my little boy again. I can't get away from him in this video. Sorry everybody. He's put a little Easter egg over. So yeah, I don't want to embellish too heavily because I don't want to cover up my shards and my mixed media. So I'm just going to do a couple of leaf sprigs. And as you saw on the sketch, Miranda's got sort of two areas that sort of show embellishment. She's got them portrayed as stars on the sketch. I'm adding a few sort of tags and leaves, and I'm using that same diagonal design. So I've got my paper shards going diagonally one way through my photo, and then the embellishments are going to go diagonally through the other line, sort of making an X. And in that respect, I have stuck quite closely to the sketch. If you like this sketch, obviously check out Miranda's series. I think there are 10 sketches available to purchase as a bulk, sort of as a set, so do check them out. They are amazing. I've seen them all. I just happened to pick this one because it was my favourite, but there are 9 others, so you'd be spoilt for choice. And I'll leave a link in the description box below to Miranda's Instagram, and I'm sure if you head over to her page you will find out a bit more information about the sketches and where you can purchase them. But I know there are lots of us taking part today. I think we've each designed with a different sketch, so I think we're going to do it as a YouTube hop. I'm working way in advance at the moment, so if we are, I'll pop the links to everybody's channels in the description box below, and that will give you an oversight of all the sketches. So if you like them, do head on over and purchase. But that is me finished for today, so thank you very much for joining me, and thank you to Miranda for having me. I hope you've enjoyed the layout and it's given you some inspiration, and I adore this sketch, so really pleased that I got to work with it. So thanks again to Miranda. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.